I found out my wife had already packed her bags after my kids asked me why mommy was giving their toys away. That's how it started. Not with a confession, not with tears, but with my 7-year-old asking if he was being punished. I'm still angry when I think about that moment because I didn't know the truth yet, and somehow that made it worse. I was standing in our living room, holding a broken action figure she'd tossed into a donation box, trying to explain something I didn't understand myself. At that point, I still believed my wife loved us. Her name was Melissa. We'd been married for 11 years. 2 kids. A house we could barely afford but were proud of. A routine so boring it felt safe. Soccer practices, grocery lists taped to the fridge, Sunday mornings with burnt pancakes. Nothing dramatic, nothing toxic, just normal. That's why what she did later felt like being shoved off a cliff without warning. Melissa didn't suddenly turn cold. That would have been easier. She didn't scream or accuse or fight. Instead, she became quiet in a way that made me feel like I was already losing her but wasn't allowed to grieve yet. She started staying out late, then later, then not coming home at all some nights. When I asked, she said it was space. When I pushed, she said I was being controlling. When I mentioned the kids, she rolled her eyes and said, "They'll be fine." That sentence still makes my stomach turn. I noticed the phone first, always face down, always locked. She used to leave it everywhere. Bathroom counter, kitchen table, couch cushions. Now it might as well have been glued to her hand. One night, after the kids were asleep, I finally asked her straight up if there was someone else. She laughed, not nervously, not defensively. She actually laughed and said, "Wow, you really think I'd cheat on you?" I apologized. That's the part people always react to when I tell the story. They get angry at me. They say I should have trusted my gut. But when you've built a life with someone, you don't want to believe they're capable of burning it down for no reason. You start doubting yourself instead. 2 weeks later, she told me she was leaving. Not, "We need counseling." Not, "I'm unhappy." Just, "I'm done." She said she'd met someone who made her feel alive again. A guy from her gym. No kids. No responsibilities. A guy who understood her. She said staying with me felt like slow death. I remember looking at her and waiting for the punchline. Waiting for her to say she was joking or angry or having a breakdown. Instead, she calmly asked how we were going to split custody. That's when I lost it. I didn't yell. I didn't insult her. I begged. I reminded her of the kids, of birthdays and Christmas mornings and bedtime stories. I asked her how she could just walk away from them like they were optional. She said something I'll never forget. "I didn't sign up to be just a mom." That was it. That was her explanation. She left 3 days later. Packed clothes, makeup, jewelry. Left behind everything that required responsibility. She hugged the kids quickly, like she was late for an appointment, and promised she'd call. She didn't. For weeks, the kids asked about her every day. First, I lied. I said she was busy, that she loved them, that she'd be back soon. Eventually, my oldest stopped asking. That scared me more than the tears. Then the calls started. Not to the kids, to me. She wanted to come by for things she forgot. She wanted updates, photos, proof that I wasn't poisoning them against her. She accused me of turning them into weapons. Meanwhile, she was posting pictures online. Beach trips, dinners, smiling like she'd just escaped prison. Her new guy, Ryan, was always in the background. Arm around her waist, hand on her thigh, living the life she'd decided was worth abandoning her family for. And then, silence. No calls, no texts, no posts. Weeks went by, then months. I found out through a mutual friend that Ryan had dumped her. Apparently, being a mom suddenly mattered again when he got bored. He didn't want kids, didn't want drama, didn't want responsibility. Funny how that works. That's when Melissa came back. Not confidently, not proudly. She showed up at my door one evening looking like someone else entirely. Thinner, tired, mascara smudged, carrying one suitcase. She started crying before I even spoke. She said she'd made a mistake. Said she was confused. Said she missed the kids more than anything. Said she finally realized what really mattered. I stood there listening while my heart did something strange. It didn't break. It hardened. Because while she was finding herself, I was doing everything alone. Homework, nightmares, doctor visits, broken hearts. I was the one explaining why mommy didn't come to school events anymore. I was the asshole in their bedtime stories because I didn't know how to explain abandonment in kid-friendly language. She asked if she could come inside. I didn't answer. That's when my daughter appeared behind me, rubbing her eyes, half asleep. Melissa smiled and whispered her name. My daughter looked at her and hid behind my leg. That moment decided everything. My daughter didn't run to her. That's what Melissa expected. You could see it in her face. She bent down slightly, arms opening like this was a movie reunion scene. Like the last few months had been a misunderstanding we could all just hug away. But my daughter pressed herself tighter against my leg and whispered, "Daddy? Who's that?" I felt Melissa flinch. That was the first real consequence she faced. Not mine, the kids. She tried to laugh it off. "Sweetie, it's mommy." Silence. My son stepped into the hallway behind his sister. He just stared. No tears. No excitement. Just confusion mixed with something older than he should have had to feel. Melissa looked at me like I'd coached them. "I told you not to turn them against me." That's when something inside me snapped. "I didn't have to," I said quietly. "You did that yourself." She started crying again, louder this time. Said she'd been in a bad place. Said Ryan manipulated her. Said she thought she deserved happiness. Said she didn't realize what she was losing. I asked her one simple question. "Did you think about them when you left?" She didn't answer. Instead, she tried to step forward again, reaching for our daughter. My daughter backed up so fast she bumped into the wall. That image burned into me. Melissa looked crushed, but it wasn't the kind of crushed that comes from guilt. It was shock, like she truly believed she could walk back into their lives and press resume. I told her she needed to leave. She froze. "What? You don't get to show up unannounced and expect everything to reset." She said she had nowhere to go. I reminded her she'd had somewhere to go when she walked out. She accused me of being heartless, of punishing her, of keeping her from her children. But here's what people don't understand. I didn't stop her from seeing them. I told her we'd go through lawyers. We'd create structure, stability, therapy if needed. She didn't want that. She wanted forgiveness without accountability. Over the next few weeks, she started calling nonstop, texting paragraphs about regret, sending old photos of us with captions like, "We were happy once." I didn't reply. Instead, I focused on the kids. They were different now, quieter. My son had started waking up at night again. My daughter refused to let go of my hand at school drop-off. They both asked if I was going to leave too. That question broke me more than anything Melissa did. So I made a decision. I filed for full custody, not out of revenge, not out of spite, but because she had already proven she could disappear the moment something more exciting came along. I couldn't gamble my kid's stability on her emotions. When she got served, she lost it. She showed up screaming in the driveway this time, neighbors watching, accusing me of trying to erase her, saying I was destroying her life. I stepped outside and told her calmly, "You destroyed it when you walked away." She tried a new tactic then. Soft voice, apologies, promises, therapy, anything. She even said she'd move back in and do whatever it takes. That's when I realized something important. She didn't miss me. She missed security. Ryan had left. Her apartment was temporary. Friends stopped answering. The fantasy collapsed. And suddenly the boring, stable life she once called slow death looked safe again. But safety isn't something you get to reclaim after burning the house down. The custody process was brutal. She painted me as controlling, claimed I emotionally isolated her, claimed she left because she was suffocating. Then the truth came out. Her own sister testified that Melissa had been planning to leave for months, that she told people she was done being a mom, that she said the kids were anchors. When I heard that word in court, my stomach turned. Anchors. That's what she called the two human beings who loved her unconditionally. The judge didn't look impressed. Melissa started crying again, saying she'd been confused, that she never meant it, that she was manipulated. But manipulation doesn't make you pack your bags and donate your child's toys. In the end, the court gave me primary custody. She got supervised visitation at first. When I told the kids, my son just nodded. My daughter asked if that meant mommy wouldn't disappear again. I told her I didn't know, because the truth is, I didn't. And deep down, I still don't know if what I did makes me the villain in someone else's version of this story. But what happened next made it impossible to ever see her the same way again. The first supervised visit didn't go the way Melissa imagined either. She showed up dressed like it was a job interview. Hair done, makeup perfect, soft sweater. The version of herself she thought looked maternal. The version she probably practiced in the mirror. The kids didn't run to her. They walked in holding my hands. The visitation room was sterile. Plastic chairs, small table, toys that weren't theirs. A woman with a clipboard pretending not to watch every breath. Melissa knelt down and opened her arms again. This time my son stepped forward, but not to hug her. He asked, very calmly, "Are you leaving again?" There are moments in life where silence feels violent. That was one of them. Melissa's mouth opened, then closed. She looked at me like I was supposed to answer for her. I didn't. Finally she said, "No, baby, mommy's here now." He didn't smile. He just nodded like he didn't believe her but wanted the conversation to end. My daughter stayed glued to me until the supervisor gently said I needed to wait outside. She cried when I stood up. Real tears, the kind that shake their whole body. Melissa reached for her and my daughter flinched. That flinch did something to Melissa. I saw it. Not anger, not defensiveness. Something uglier. Resentment. Because in that moment, she realized rebuilding trust wasn't going to be emotional and cinematic. It was going to be slow, humbling, and centered on the kids, not her. The visits continued weekly. First, the kids barely talked. They answered questions politely. They didn't volunteer stories. They didn't cuddle. They didn't fight to sit next to her. They treated her like a substitute teacher. And every time she'd come out after the hour ended, she'd look more frustrated than heartbroken. One afternoon, she cornered me in the parking lot. "This isn't fair," she said. "They're distant. You're poisoning them." I kept my voice even. "I never say anything bad about you." "That's worse," she snapped. "You're making me look like the bad one without saying it." "You left," I said. "That's not something I created." She started crying again, but this time it didn't move me. I'd seen too many versions of those tears. The angry tears, the victim tears, the self-pity tears, rarely the accountable ones. Then came the turning point. About 3 months into supervised visits, she missed one. No call, no warning. I didn't tell the kids at first. I said there was a scheduling issue, but my son noticed the tension in my face. "Did she not come?" he asked quietly. I nodded. He didn't cry. He just said, "Okay." That scared me more than if he had screamed. Melissa called later that night claiming car trouble. Said she was overwhelmed. Said it wasn't intentional. But patterns don't lie. 2 weeks later, she missed another one. The supervisor documented it. The court noticed, and something inside me finally settled. Because this wasn't about me being unforgiving. It wasn't about revenge. It was about consistency, stability, safety. Melissa wanted the idea of motherhood back. The image, the redemption arc. But parenting isn't a comeback story. It's showing up when it's boring, when it's hard, when no one applauds you. After the second missed visit, my daughter stopped asking about her entirely. Not angrily, not sadly, just done. That hurt more than anything else. A year after she first showed up at my door with that suitcase, Melissa asked to meet me alone. We sat at a coffee shop like strangers. She looked older, not physically, just worn down. "I messed up," she said. "I know that now." I waited. I thought I could come back and fix it. I thought love would just still be there. I nodded slowly. Love was there. Trust wasn't. She swallowed. "Do you hate me?" I thought about that carefully. "No," I said, "but I don't trust you, and I won't risk them on hope." That was the most honest thing I could give her. She cried quietly this time. Not dramatic, not manipulative, just quiet regret. But regret doesn't rewind damage. Over time, her visits became less frequent, then optional, then rare. The kids adjusted. We built new routines, new traditions, a quieter, steadier life. I won't pretend it wasn't hard. There were nights I questioned myself, wondered if I should have tried harder to let her back in fully. But every time doubt crept in, I remembered my daughter hiding behind my leg, and I remembered the word anchors. Years from now, maybe the kids will decide to rebuild something with her. That will be their choice. But as their father, my job was never to restore her comfort. It was to protect their peace. And if that makes me the asshole in someone's version of this story, I can live with that. If the story made you feel something, hit subscribe and stick around, because the next one might hit even harder. I found the divorce papers on the kitchen counter the same day my husband told our kids we were stronger than ever. That's how I learned my marriage was over. Not from a fight, not from a confession, but from a stack of neatly printed pages sitting next to a bowl of half-eaten cereal. His signature was already there. 12 years, 2 kids, a mortgage, a dog that only listened to him, and apparently a secret plan I knew nothing about. His name is Daniel. If you asked anyone who knew us, they would have called him dependable, steady, quiet, the kind of man who fixed broken cabinet doors the same day he noticed them, the kind who packed school lunches and never forgot dentist appointments. That's why what I found 3 days later felt unreal. But I'm getting ahead of myself. When I saw the papers, I thought it was a mistake. Some legal thing for work. Some paperwork I didn't understand. Then I saw the word petitioner, his name, and under reason for dissolution, it said, irreconcilable differences. My hands went cold. Daniel walked in from the garage while I was still staring at it. He saw the papers in my hands, sighed and said, "I was going to talk to you tonight, like this was a dinner topic." I asked him what it meant. My voice sounded calm, which still confuses me. Maybe shock numbs everything at first. "It means I'm not happy," he said, just like that. No build-up, no warning, no counseling attempt, no late-night arguments, no screaming matches. "I've been trying," he continued, "but I can't do this anymore." I asked him what this meant. He gestured vaguely around the house. The routine, the pressure, the pretending. Pretending what? That we're okay. I felt like I was standing outside my own body, because as far as I knew, we were okay. Not wildly romantic, not posting anniversary tributes every year, but stable, functional, respectful. We had problems like everyone else. Money stress, exhaustion, parenting disagreements, but nothing that felt fatal. I asked him if there was someone else. He hesitated. That hesitation answered everything. He didn't say yes right away. He said, "It's not like that," which of course means it is exactly like that. Her name was Claire. I didn't know her yet, just the name, a woman from his office. "It just happened," he said. "We connected. I laughed then, not because it was funny, because I suddenly realized how stupid I'd been. The late meetings, the new cologne, the gym membership he never invited me to join, the way he started locking his phone. I had noticed. I just didn't want to see it. "What about the kids?" I asked. He looked genuinely pained. "I love them. This isn't about them. That's what they always say." He told me he'd been unhappy for years. that he stayed because he thought it would get better. That meeting Claire made him realize he deserved more. I remember staring at him thinking, deserved more than what? More than a wife who worked part-time so she could be home when the kids got off the bus? More than family dinners and shared bank accounts and inside jokes that took a decade to build? I wanted to scream. Instead, I asked when he planned to leave. He said Claire had an apartment, so it wasn't new. It wasn't spontaneous. It was planned. That night, after the kids were asleep, I went through our bedroom like I was cataloging evidence of a crime. His side of the closet was already lighter, a few drawers emptier than they should have been. He'd been packing quietly, and I hadn't noticed. The next morning, he told the kids we were going to live in 2 houses but still be a family. My daughter asked if that meant Daddy was mad at Mommy. Daniel said no. My son asked if he did something wrong. Daniel said absolutely not. Then he hugged them like he was going on a business trip. He moved out that afternoon. I didn't cry until I found the extra phone. It was in his old gym bag. A cheap prepaid phone. Dead battery. I charged it. And that's when the illusion of emotional connection shattered completely. Messages, photos, plans. Not just flirtation. Not just emotional cheating. Hotel reservations. Weekends away, he told me, were work conferences. Texts from Claire asking if he'd told her yet. Told her. I realized something terrifying in that moment. I wasn't part of the decision. I was the obstacle. He had already emotionally left long before those papers hit the counter. The next week was chaos. Lawyers, custody schedules, telling extended family. My mother cried. His mother blamed me quietly. And Claire? She posted a photo with him 2 weeks later. Nos cham, no delay. Caption, finally choosing happiness. I stared at that sentence for a long time. Finally, as if I'd been some long prison sentence. That's when something shifted in me. Not heartbreak, clarity. Because if he could walk away that cleanly, maybe there were things I hadn't seen. Things I didn't understand yet. And 3 months later, I found something that changed everything I thought I knew about why he really left. 3 months after Daniel moved out, I stopped crying. Not because it hurt less, because I was too busy surviving. Single parenting is loud in a way people don't warn you about. There's no quiet breakdown time. You don't get to collapse dramatically on the kitchen floor. You still have to pack lunches, sign permission slips, pretend everything is stable when your world feels split in half. Daniel had the kids every other weekend. At first, they came back from his place excited. New board games, pizza nights, Claire smiling in the background like she'd stepped into a ready-made life. My daughter mentioned once that Claire braided her hair. I smiled and said that was nice. Then I locked myself in the bathroom and cried into a towel so they wouldn't hear me. But here's the part that started bothering me. Daniel wasn't struggling. No visible guilt. No awkward transition period. No regret. He moved seamlessly from husband to new boyfriend like he'd been rehearsing it. And maybe he had. Because one evening, while sorting through old tax documents for my lawyer, I found something strange. A separate bank account. Not new. It had been open for 2 years. 2. Transfers from our joint account had been moving into it monthly. Small enough amounts I never noticed. Labeled vaguely as savings adjustment. The total wasn't massive, but it was enough for a security deposit. Enough for furniture. Enough to quietly build an exit plan. My hands shook. This wasn't a midlife crisis. It was premeditated. I confronted him during a custody handoff. He didn't deny it. I needed options, he said. Options. Like we were a subscription he could cancel. So you've been planning to leave for 2 years? I asked. He rubbed his face. I've been unhappy for 2 years. That's not the same thing. He didn't respond. Instead, he said something that finally made the puzzle pieces click. You stopped seeing me. I almost laughed. Stopped seeing him? I worked part-time because he said it made sense financially. I handled school logistics, doctor appointments, groceries, holidays. I knew his coffee order, his work stress patterns, the way he liked the thermostat set. But apparently I didn't see him. I asked what that meant. He hesitated, then said, "You became a mom first, a wife second." That sentence echoed in my head for days, because I realized something painful. He wasn't leaving because he fell in love. He was leaving because he wanted to feel prioritized. Claire didn't share kids with him. She didn't need him to help with math homework. She didn't ask him to fix broken sinks. She saw him at his best, rested, polished, unburdened. Of course she saw him. She didn't share the weight of real life. That realization didn't excuse him, but it reframed everything. He didn't want a different partner. He wanted a different version of himself. The problem? That version only exists when someone else is doing the heavy lifting. And here's where things shifted again. 6 months after the divorce was finalized, Daniel showed up at my door unannounced. Alone. No Claire. He looked tired. Not dramatic tired. Not breakdown tired. Just worn. The kind of tired that comes from reality settling in. He asked if we could talk. Against my better judgment, I let him in. We sat at the same kitchen table where I'd found the papers. He didn't waste time. "It's not what I thought it would be," he admitted. I stayed quiet. He said living with Claire felt different now. Harder. More complicated. That the spark felt less intense. I raised an eyebrow. "You mean normal?" He didn't smile. "She wants more," he said. "More what?" "More commitment. More attention. More priority." I felt something almost dangerous rise in my chest. Recognition. Because the irony was suffocating. The very thing he accused me of, not prioritizing him enough, was now being demanded by the woman he left me for. Except this time, there were no kids to balance. No shared history. Just expectations. And he was already struggling. I asked him directly, "Are you regretting leaving?" He didn't answer immediately, but silence speaks loudly. He said he missed the kids, missed dinners, missed stability. There it was again. Stability. The same word he once described as suffocating. I asked him if Claire knew he was here. Another hesitation. "No." That told me everything, because he wasn't coming back for the kids. He was testing the door, seeing if it was still unlocked. And that's when I understood something that made my chest feel unexpectedly calm. He didn't leave because he found something better. He left because he assumed he could. And now he was realizing maybe he couldn't. But what he didn't know yet was that I wasn't the same woman who found those papers 3 months ago. And what I did next changed the entire direction of this story. When Daniel showed up at my door that night, I could see it in his posture. Not confidence, not certainty, unraveling. He sat at the kitchen table like he used to, fingers laced together, staring at the wood grain as if the right words were hidden inside it. "I made a mistake," he finally said. "Not, I'm unhappy. Not, I'm confused. A mistake." It's amazing how quickly language changes when consequences settle in. I didn't rush to respond. I'd had months to sit with the wreckage he left behind. Months to rebuild routines. Months to tuck in our kids alone and learn that I was stronger than I thought. "You didn't make a mistake," I said calmly. "You made a choice." He swallowed. "I thought I wanted something different." "You did want something different. I didn't think it would be like this." There it was again. Reality disappointing him. I asked about Claire. He exhaled slowly. "It's complicated." Of course it was. Because Claire wasn't the fantasy anymore. She was a real person with real expectations. Bills. Emotions. Needs. And now that the secret was gone, so was the thrill. "Does she know you're here?" I asked again. He looked down. "No." That told me everything. He wasn't trying to fix one relationship. He was trying to escape another. I leaned back in my chair and studied him. This man who once felt like home now felt like a stranger asking for shelter from a storm he chose to walk into. "What exactly are you asking for, Daniel?" He hesitated, then said it. "Another chance." It didn't hit me like I expected. "Noray, no bunde kaschen." No desperate hope, just clarity. Because for months, I had imagined this moment. Imagined him realizing what he'd lost. Imagined the power of being the one who gets to decide. And now that it was here, I didn't feel powerful. I felt tired. "You didn't just leave me," I said quietly. "You left the kids every night. You left birthdays. You left homework and bad dreams and stomach bugs. I still see them. Every other weekend." I interrupted. "That's not the same." He rubbed his face again, like he always did when cornered by truth. "I thought you didn't see me anymore," he said. "I was drowning," I replied. "And instead of helping me swim, you built a life raft for yourself." That silence again. Heavy. Final. He reached across the table, not touching me, just close enough to suggest the possibility. "I miss us." I shook my head slowly. "You miss being taken care of." That landed, because that's what our marriage had been in the end. I carried the invisible load. The planning, the remembering, the emotional temperature checks. Claire probably expected partnership. I had provided comfort. He mistook comfort for entitlement. "I can do better," he said quickly. "I can show up. I'll end things with her. We can go to therapy." The words sounded rehearsed, like a pitch, and that's when I realized something almost terrifying. If he had shown up 6 months earlier, I might have said yes. But in those 6 months, I learned how to breathe without waiting for someone else to exhale first. "I don't want to rebuild with someone who only values me after losing me," I said. He looked stunned. "You don't mean that." "Ido." For the first time since the divorce, I wasn't reacting. I was choosing. "You taught me something," I continued. "You showed me I can survive without you. I don't want to go back to being someone's backup plan." He stood up then, pacing slightly, panic creeping in. "So that's it? 12 years and you're just done?" The irony almost made me laugh. 12 years, I repeated. "And you ended it with paperwork on a kitchen counter." That shut him up. We stood there for a moment that felt like the true ending of our marriage. Not when he left, not when the papers were signed, but right then, because this time I was the one closing the door. He left without another word. 2 weeks later, I heard through mutual friends that he and Claire had broken up. Apparently she found messages between him and someone else. Yes, someone else. History repeats when lessons aren't learned. He tried calling me after that. I didn't answer, not out of cruelty, but because the version of me who would have picked up the phone doesn't exist anymore. The kids still see him. He's their father. I never stand in the way of that, but the pedestal I once placed him on is gone. And here's the part that surprises people when I tell this story. I don't hate Claire. I don't even hate Daniel. What I feel is something quieter. Acceptance. Because sometimes people don't leave because you failed. They leave because they believe the grass is greener. And sometimes they come back when they realize it's just different grass. But by then, you've already planted something new. If you were in my place, would you have taken him back? Let me know in the comments. And subscribe if you want more real stories that hit this hard. My sister wore my wedding dress before I did. I didn't find out until 3 weeks before my ceremony, when her fiancé accidentally tagged her in a photo dump. That's how I learned 2 things at the same time. She had been secretly trying on my custom gown. She was planning her wedding for the same month as mine. Let me rewind. My name is Lauren.
I'm 29.
I've been with my fiancé, Ethan, for 6 years. We weren't the whirlwind couple. We were the slow build, best friends first, stable kind. The kind people assume will last because there's no chaos. My older sister, Megan, has always been chaos. Growing up, she was louder, prettier, the one teachers adored and boys chased. I was the quiet one, the dependable one, the mature for my age one. We were never enemies, but we were never equal. When Ethan proposed, my parents cried. My friends screamed. Even Megan hugged me and said, "Finally, it's your turn." That sentence stuck with me longer than I realized. It's your turn. Like happiness was rotational. Like she'd had it first. She got married at 23. Big wedding, big honeymoon, big everything. And then 2 years later, a very quiet divorce. After that, she spiraled a bit, dated aggressively, talked constantly about not wanting to fall behind in life. So when I started wedding planning, I tried to be careful. I didn't gush too much, didn't post constant updates, didn't want to rub salt in wounds she pretended weren't there. I even asked her to be my maid of honor. She cried when I did, said it meant everything. Looking back, maybe it did, just not the way I thought. 3 months into planning, I found the dress. It wasn't off the rack. It was custom, ivory silk, fitted bodice, hand-stitched details my grandmother helped design before she passed. It was the one thing about the wedding that felt deeply personal. When it arrived, I kept it at my parents' house because their spare room had better storage. Megan still had a key. I didn't think twice about that until the Instagram tag. It was a blurry photo at first glance. Megan in a white dress, laughing, champagne in hand. Caption, "Round 2, but make it better." I froze. The dress looked familiar. Too familiar. I zoomed in. It was mine. The neckline, the stitching pattern, even the tiny pearl detail near the waist that I'd asked the designer to add last minute. My hands started shaking. I didn't call her immediately. I drove to my parents' house. The dress bag was zipped up exactly how I left it. But when I opened it, the silk wasn't smooth anymore. It had faint creases, slight makeup transfer near the collarbone area. It had been worn. My chest felt tight. I called Megan. She answered on the second ring.
Hey, sis.
I didn't waste time. "Why were you wearing my dress?" Silence. Then laughter. Nervous. Forced. "Oh my God. You saw that?" "Yes. It was just for fun," she said quickly. "We were joking around at Ryan's place. I wanted to see what it looked like on me." "At Ryan's place?" Her fiancé. The room started spinning slightly. "You took my wedding dress to your fiancé's apartment?" I asked. "It's not that serious," she snapped. "Relax, relax." She had champagne in her hand. In my dress, at a pre-engagement party I didn't know existed. "Are you planning a wedding?" I asked. Another pause. Maybe. When?" She exhaled dramatically. "Late summer. My wedding was early September." "Why didn't you tell me?" "I didn't want to make it a thing," she said. "It's not a competition." But it suddenly felt exactly like one. I asked her why she would wear my dress without permission. And that's when the mask slipped. "Because I wanted to see if it looked better on me," she said. She didn't mean to say it out loud, but she did. Silence filled the call. Then she tried to backtrack. "I didn't mean it like that. I just..." "No," I said quietly. "You did." I hung up. That night I couldn't sleep. Not because of the dress itself, but because something much older cracked open. It wasn't about silk and pearls. It was about a lifetime of being second. At birthdays, she opened gifts first. At family dinners, her stories were louder. At holidays, she was the one everyone asked about. And now, when it was finally my turn, she couldn't let me have it cleanly. The next morning, my mom called. "She didn't mean anything by it," she said immediately. That told me Megan had already spun her version. She was just excited. "You know how she is." Yes, I did. But for the first time, I wasn't sure I was willing to keep excusing it. Then Ethan came home from work with a strange expression on his face. "Did you know Ryan texted me?" he asked. My stomach dropped.
No.
He handed me his phone. Ryan's message was simple. "Man, small world. Looks like we'll both be grooms this fall. Megan says we might even share vendors though." Share vendors? My heart started pounding, because that's when it hit me. This wasn't impulsive. This wasn't playful. She was planning her wedding intentionally close to mine, and possibly copying more than just the dress. And when I found out what she had already booked behind my back, that's when this stopped being sibling rivalry and turned into something much darker. I wish I could say I overreacted. I wish this was just insecurity spiraling out of control. But 2 days after the dress incident, my wedding planner called me with a tone I'd never heard before, confused. "Lauren, quick question," she said. "Did you authorize a secondary consultation under your name?" My stomach dropped instantly.
No.
"Why?" "Well, someone reached out claiming to be your sister. She said you were reconsidering some design choices and wanted to compare floral layouts." I gripped the counter so hard my knuckles went white. What exactly did she ask for? There was a pause, papers shuffling. She requested the same peony and ivory arrangement, the suspended candle installation, and the live string quartet. Every single custom element I'd spent months designing. It wasn't coincidence. It was duplication. I hung up and called Megan immediately. She didn't answer. Of course she didn't. Instead, she texted, "Can you not turn this into drama? Vendors talk. It's normal to ask questions. Normal. Using my name to access my contracts was normal?" I drove to her apartment without thinking. I didn't call ahead. I didn't rehearse what I'd say. She opened the door already defensive. "I knew you'd freak out," she said before I even spoke. "You used my name. It was just to see pricing. Chill. You're copying my wedding." She laughed. That laugh again. Sharp. Dismissive. "You don't own candles and flowers, Lauren." "It's not about candles," I snapped. "It's about you trying to compete with me." Her expression shifted slightly. Not guilt. Irritation. "Everything isn't about you," she said. "Maybe I just have good taste." There it was. That old dynamic. She pushes. I shrink. But something in me didn't shrink this time. "You wore my dress," I said. "You're planning your wedding a week before mine. You're contacting my vendors under my name. And you expect me to believe this isn't intentional?" She crossed her arms. "Maybe I don't want to sit at your wedding watching you have the perfect moment while everyone whispers about my failed first marriage." The air went still. Ah, so this wasn't about aesthetics. It was about spotlight. "I'm not responsible for your divorce," I said quietly. "No," she shot back, "but you are benefiting from timing." Timing, like happiness was a limited resource. I stared at her, trying to understand how we got here. We used to share clothes, secrets, childhood bedrooms. And now she was treating my wedding like a race she couldn't afford to lose. Then she said something that made my chest tighten. "Ryan thinks our wedding should be bigger. Bigger." Mine wasn't extravagant. It was elegant, intimate, meaningful. But Megan always needed bigger. "Are you trying to outdo me?" I asked. "I'm trying not to disappear," she said. That sentence hit differently. For a second, I almost felt sympathy. Almost. But then she added, "You've always played the quiet card. The good daughter. The stable one. People root for you." "Root for me?" I wanted to laugh. "You think being dependable is a strategy?" I asked. "I think it's convenient," she replied. And that's when I realized something. This wasn't new. She had always framed my calmness as manipulation, my steadiness as advantage, my silence as calculation. Because if she admitted I was simply different, not competing, then she'd have to confront her own insecurity. I left her apartment shaking. That night, I made 3 phone calls. First to my wedding planner. I password protected everything. Second to the venue. Same thing. Third to my parents. That call was the hardest. My mom tried to smooth it over immediately. "She's just sensitive right now. She's sabotaging me," I said bluntly. "She wouldn't do that. She already has." Then my dad got on the phone. And for the first time in my life, he didn't defend her. "She's been asking a lot of questions," he admitted quietly. "About guest lists. About your seating chart." My heart sank. "She requested a copy," he continued. "A copy." I felt cold. Why would she need that? There was a long pause. She said she didn't want overlap confusion. Overlap confusion. Our families are the same. Of course there would be overlap. Unless she was planning to invite people before I did. Unless she wanted to secure attendance first. That's when the darker possibility surfaced. If her wedding happened first, and if she framed it as the big comeback, would mine feel like an afterthought? I hated that the thought even crossed my mind. But I knew Megan, and 3 days later, the final piece fell into place. I received an envelope in the mail. No return address. Inside was a printed copy of Megan's save the date. Elegant script. Ivory cardstock. Wedding date, August 30th. Mine was September 6th. 1 week apart. Same city. Same guest pool. Same vendors on standby. And at the bottom, in small gold lettering, because love deserves a second chance. I stared at that line for a long time. It wasn't subtle. It wasn't accidental. It was positioning. And suddenly I wasn't just planning a wedding. I was standing in the middle of a lifelong rivalry that had finally decided to explode publicly. And what I did next changed our relationship forever. When Megan's save the date arrived, something inside me snapped into place. Not rage, not panic, strategy. For the first time in my life, I stopped reacting to her, and I started thinking 3 steps ahead. If she wanted to turn our weddings into a public scoreboard, fine. But I wasn't going to play defense. I called my venue first. There was one earlier Saturday available in August. It had opened unexpectedly because another couple postponed. I took it.
No hesitación.
August 16th, 2 full weeks before hers. When I told Ethan, he blinked in surprise. "Are you sure?" he asked. "Yes," I said calmly. I'm done letting her set the tone. We didn't announce it immediately. I wanted everything locked in first. Contracts signed. Deposits secured. Vendors confirmed under new passwords. Then I called my parents. My mom panicked. "She's going to feel attacked." "I'm not attacking her," I said evenly. "I'm getting married." "But the timing." "She chose to overlap," I replied. "I'm choosing peace." My dad stayed quiet for a moment. Then he said something unexpected. "You should have done this years ago." That sentence hit deeper than he probably intended, because it wasn't just about wedding dates. It was about boundaries. When we sent out our updated invitations, Megan called within minutes. Her voice wasn't angry. It was tight. "You moved it." "Yes." "Why?" "Because I wanted to." Silence. "You're doing this to spite me." "No," I said. "I'm doing this to stop feeling spite." She scoffed. "You think getting married first makes you win?" That word again. Win. "I'm not competing with you," I said quietly. "You are." And for the first time in our entire lives, I didn't soften my tone to protect her ego. "You wore my dress. You contacted my vendors. You tried to position your wedding as the comeback event of the year. I adjusted my plans so I can enjoy mine without wondering what you're copying next." She didn't respond immediately. When she finally spoke, her voice cracked slightly. "You've always had it easier." I almost laughed. "Easier," I repeated. "Megan, I've just stayed in my lane. You act like you're above it all." "No," I said. "I just don't need an audience." That's when she said something I'll never forget. "I thought if I could outshine you just once, I'd finally feel okay." And suddenly the chaos made sense. This wasn't about silk dresses or floral arches. It was about identity. She had built hers on being the impressive one, the dramatic one, the one everyone watched. And when her first marriage failed, that image cracked. My steady relationship threatened the only thing she had left: comparison. For a second, I saw her clearly, not as a villain, but as someone terrified of fading. But understanding someone doesn't mean sacrificing yourself for them. "My wedding isn't your therapy," I said gently. That was the end of the call. The weeks leading up to my new date were strangely calm.
No vender interference.
No cryptic comments. Just quiet. Almost too quiet. Then, 5 days before my ceremony, my mom showed up at my apartment unannounced. She looked stressed. "Megan postponed," she said immediately. "What?" "She moved her wedding to October." That surprised me. "Why?" "She said it didn't feel right anymore." I didn't know how to respond. Part of me expected sabotage, some dramatic attempt to reclaim the spotlight. Instead, she stepped back. My wedding day arrived warm and golden, the kind of late summer evening that feels like it was designed for photographs. I wore my dress, freshly cleaned, untouched by anyone else's shadow. As I stood at the end of the aisle, I caught Megan's eye in the second row. She looked smaller, not physically, just quieter. She didn't smile widely. She didn't cry theatrically. She simply watched. And for the first time, I didn't feel like I was performing for her approval or bracing for her reaction. I was just present. After the ceremony, she approached me alone. "You look beautiful," she said softly. "Thank you." Pause. "I'm sorry about the dress," she added. It wasn't dramatic. It wasn't defensive. Just simple. "I know," I replied. We didn't hug, but we didn't fight either. And that felt like progress. Her October wedding ended up being smaller, simpler, less theatrical than I expected. Different from mine. Different from her first. Different from the competition she tried to create. And here's the twist no one saw coming. A year later, she admitted something during a late-night conversation over wine. "If you hadn't moved your date," she said, "I would have tried to outdo you until I hated myself." That honesty stunned me, because I realized something uncomfortable. By stepping out of the rivalry, I forced her to confront it alone. Sometimes the most powerful move isn't louder. It's calmer. And if this story makes you wonder whether I was too harsh or finally strong, tell me in the comments, and subscribe for more real stories where family drama gets a little too real.